Chaluch, zo bias die ayus, labeti lacheel, labeti sayuyas, labeti alachad, dat is sayuyas, pa ta aqua artisla albert. I am Delbert Miller, Smutcoom from Skokomish, and I want to have a few minutes just to talk a little bit about what my old people said. That song is a raven, and I decided that I would try and have a conversation with this raven. The raven said that the time before humans, everyone had one voice. The fog, the wind, the rocks, the trees, everyone had one voice. Well, one day, the birds decided to be a little bit mischievous. And they began to fly around, and they began to announce to all the animals, and began to announce to the water, announce to everybody. Made this grand announcement, all the birds began to sing. The sky is going to fall, and it's going to crush everything, going to kill everything. And so they needed to know who was brave enough to stop the sky from crushing everything. And everybody stood up and they measured and they said, no, you're not tall enough. Even if you could hold up the sky, everything else would be crushed because you're not tall enough. All the deer stood up, the bear stood up, everybody. And they would look at them and realize, oh, they're too small yet. But there was one people, Satadabixw, the standing people. The standing people began to announce that they're tall and they're straight and that they'll hold up the sky. They're going to hold up the sky. And so they all began to make a beeline, make a line for the tallest of the hills. Some began to look for the tallest of mountains, and they all took off running because they wanted to save the earth. Well, as life would have it, some of them weren't very swift. Some of them weren't very fast, and they weren't very much blessed with the endurance. So in their race for the highest of places, they only made it a little ways. And those ones only made it a little ways, they got worn out and they stopped. They said, this is as far as we can go. So they took root right where they were. And they were embarrassed. That's all they could go. They were embarrassed, and their leaves blushed with their embarrassment, and they had to announce, that's all I got. That's all I got. Others went a little further. The alders went a little bit further. And as they all began to making their way up to the hills, some of them had to take root, and they said, this is all the further I can go. And that their leaves blushed. And as the others continued on, giving it their all, and while they're giving it their all of the plant people, were running along beside them, cheering them on. You can make it. Keep going, you can make it. They were cheering all of the trees on, and the trees were trudging on. There was one that was filled and blessed with such endurance. It was the hemlock tree. The hemlock tree began to go further and further up. And the yew wood trees began to go further up. And as they got further up, the hemlock began to get near the top of the highest parts and began to run out of gas. And it only made it onto the side of the hills, up on the side of the mountains near the tree line. And the hemlocks had to stop and take root on the face of this hillside in the mountains. And when they stopped, all of their limbs were tilted to one side, and that their tops of their trees were bowed as well. And now so when we see to this day these hemlock trees, the branches are altered or staggered, and the tops are curled. And that was to remember that day when they almost made it to the peak of the mountain to hold up the sky. But this raven that had begun speaking, the grandfather to this raven, was telling about this to the people, the humans that first arrived, that they were made from this earth, these first humans. The raven was given a job to explain to these humans things about this world, because they were here now to take over this world, the humans. They were created. And so the raven, to the raven, was telling these humans why all these trees, is it that they're down on the lowlands and they're lush for parts of the year, and why they change colors, because they were embarrassed and they said, that's all I got. So they had to take root down there. And the raven was reminding these humans, your job is to come here and take the lessons of all of these people here, the standing people. And as they were taking their lessons about the standing people, this raven, the grandfather to the ravens, began to tell them, you listen to them, because these standing people are going to tell you. They're going to tell you something when the wind is blowing, that what is happening in the land. They're going to be telling the people many things. They're going to show the people how to have awe in their life. For when a breeze comes, these humans are going to experience awe. Such an awe from life itself. They were getting these lessons of life. They were getting and being embarrassed. They were getting talked to about when it's going to be a fierce storm. And they're going to be taught how to applaud, because the plant people talked about applauding, and now these trees will applaud. And they're going to teach these humans about peace, being completely content with a gentle breeze. And those are the places the humans were always drawn to, for the trees gave them such a content feeling by listening to the wind blowing through, and the trees would explain to them, this is the place of great contentment. And so the grandfather to these ravens was telling the humans about the trees, where they were now the lessons of life. There was the training that our young people go through, the teachings of willow. The silver willow is the one who gave us the teachings about endurance and going through the struggles and hardships of life. For these willows grow low to the ground. And that as in a time now this little green shoots begin to grow onto the willow. And there comes a time when that willow tree, now his time was done on this earth, the branch would fall to the land, and the body now would fall and become food for this new generation of willows that were growing up through the shoots. And so now these green sprouts that were grown on the branches would grow up into a full-grown tree, and that they would become a place of rest for the grouse and for the birds, and that they would talk about this gift of the family tree continuing on. Family tree continues on. And so now this trunk of this willow would be getting old, and the branch would fall off. This body would fall down, become food for the new generation of willows that began to grow from the green sprouts. And it would continue on generation after generation after generation. And that is how come what we call our family tree, how that was given to the humans from the willow tree. And the raven was explaining to these humans how to keep track of your family tree, for they all came from just one tree, this willow. And so that they were talking to them, maybe there's great hardships, maybe there's suffering, and so this branch would fall. The body would become food for them, and they would grow into another tree. And they were given the right and the ability to understand how to rise up out of the hardships of life, and your family tree grows up again. We might get knocked down to our knees, but we'll rise up again if we accept the teachings of the silver willow. And these are things the grandfather to the ravens was explaining to the humans. And he said that these trees, they only made it a little ways in their race to save the earth from the sky crushing it. Well, those ones got a blush in their cheeks, and that's why their leaves turn. He was telling that to the humans about being embarrassed, the blush in their cheeks. But he said there comes a time in that lesson of being vulnerable, because those trees now, after they had blushed on their leaves, now the leaves would fall, and now everyone could look right to their trunk. And they were talking to the humans now, these trunks, look even right to the trunk of who I am. This is how you be vulnerable. This is who you express who you are. You have nothing to hide. These are the lessons that might get embarrassed, and we could still be vulnerable and show everybody who we are. We will expose who we are in this manner. And so these humans were studying all of the standing people for their qualities of contentment, of showing a fierce storm, of showing how to applaud. All of the lessons of life about having awe of life. The grand trees, talking about Shabaluk. The grand cedars would be Shabaluk, teaching the humans now. Look at this big grandmother of the cedar tree, Sikolaluk. Go stand underneath that grandmother, Sikolal. And underneath it will be dry, and that's what Shabaluk means, to be dry underneath. The grandmother will stand over and keep you from the weather and life. And that is the training to the humans, how we look to our elders to be Shabaluk to us. Stand and protect us from the weather. Offering these gifts. There's many gifts to the cedar tree, Sikolal. How to be generous. How to be caring and protecting. All the things in life, but this cedar, the grandmother cedar tree would say, take of my skin and make baskets. Take of my skin and make clothes. Take of my body and make boxes. Take of my body and make a canoe. Take of my body and make a house. And now these humans, they said, you study this grandmother, and she'll say to take of my body, to make a house. And so the humans did. They were pitiful, had nothing. Had nothing. And now that they were in this house, now they began to be bitey and grumpy and snipping at each other. bad mood because they're indoors. But this grandmother told them to take off my fingers and sweep your homes. Sweep out the burdens of life, the troubles and the hardships of life. Sweep them out. And that's how you care for one another. So they were being shown the lessons of life, how to be caring to one another, how to be Shabalak, protecting each other, how to be generous in life, how to be generous, how to be caring, how to be observing and thinking of everybody else. Those are the things that this Skokomish, the grandmother cedar tree, was giving. But there was one gift left. All of the people were trying to guess what it is. The last gift in life. What is it that we're trying to see here? What is it that we're trying to understand? And so that they finally came to this one last gift. They had looked at that grandmother cedar tree who had been there thousands of years, grew to such a giant, and continued to give freely. So they said, well, it must be generosity. It must be caring. It must be compassion. No, not it yet. Not it yet. Until they finally realized the last gift that the humans were to receive in this teaching, this training. And that this is the gift of endurance. The gift of endurance. Because this old tree, grandmother Skokomish, had been through forest fires, had been through freezing, through the heat, through the wind, through the lightning, through every storm of life. But we're given the gift of endurance. And that was the final gift, the top of this tree. We see that, and we got to remember endurance, that we can make it through all of the storms in life. And that is a significant thing to learn, to understand, to talk to our young people about endurance. And those are the things that this grandmother cedar tree is teaching us. The grandfather of the ravens was telling the humans about these standing people, the lessons of them. The peacefulness, the tranquility was learned by studying the trees. The peacefulness, the lushness of life, they were learning from the standing people. And that they knew that they had people that was supporting them, and that was the plant people. And that because of their offering, those trees were always given some support by the plant people. And so that they had to say that no matter how big and tall you are, there are still people that will support and help you out. And that you still will offer a place of refuge to these plants. You will offer that. And so the leaves and the needles, the leaves would fall and become the food for all of the plants, for all of the bugs. They began to be food for everything else. So we're told to follow the lessons of the standing people. And that this grandfather to the ravens told everybody that there is a common ground, that you humans remember the common ground. We all have a common ground, that all of them, their roots were intertwined. All of them were receiving food from the earth, and that the gift of these roots that were growing, for their roots were tangled amongst each other, that they were all intertwined with one another. They were all a common ground, and that we all have this ability to have a common ground, and that the gift of erosion, the dealing with erosion and things being washed away, the trees are teaching us how to have a common ground to prevent erosion. And it's up to us humans to understand what erosion means in my life. What are the things I need to do to prevent being an erosion behavior and attitude in life? How am I doing this? What do I need to pay attention to? And these are things that we were granted to pay attention to. About erosion, about the inner roots and the ground all tangled. And my uncle used to talk about this, all this common ground, all had a common place where their roots mixed, and they never had a judgment over one another. They never had a dispute there. They were completely without thought, without a question. And that place is Asbilchad. Is when I come to that place that I can have no thought at all. And that is where I feed the people. This is the thing about this that we're talking about here, is how do you feed the people? How do you feed the people? If you don't understand, maybe go study the Satadabixw. Go study these standing people. Learn how to feed the people. And that this is a great day for the rain and the dewdrops. They all come to this earth, and that they also had a voice that was equal, and that they began to feed the people too. The rain and the trees had to realize that we take this help from somebody that seems so small. But it can be too powerful and cause erosion. And so we have to pay attention in our balance of life. It can be a feeder, a protector, and a water, but it can also cause the erosion. So that we have to see a balance in life. And that balance of life you would see then is also the tree is our protector, it's our shield, it offers everything, but it can also fall and cause harm. And so we're to learn the balance of life as well. The balance of life. Now I want to sing a song, and that this is something my grandmother had me in training as a young child, that I had to go as part of my training. And I was receiving things about this, but my grandmother finally, there came a day when I was doing this effort of following this silver willow, and I was training with these trees, sitting, listening to these days in the summertime. There was a place that I was drawn to, that I would return to day after day after day, year after year after year. And that this place was amongst the cottonwoods, the cottonwood trees along the river. I was drawn there, and I didn't really know why. I didn't realize what I was doing, and I would go there in the afternoons towards just before evening. And I would begin to listen, because it was my favorite place that I would return to. I would take naps there. I would listen to all this wind going through the cottonwoods. And that I realized that there was the beautiful songs that the robins were leaving. They were sharing this amongst one another. They were talking about the day's news, the day's events, the changes of their life. They were talking about many things, these robins that were sitting amongst all of the cottonwood trees. And as I listened to them for a long time, my grandmother would have me report, what are you learning about with these trees? What are you learning about with the Satadabixw? What are you learning? What are you saying? What's going on? So I told her about this place where these robins would come and sit in amongst the cottonwoods, and how I would always return there and listen to them. And she said, yes, sometimes these are telling us we have a place in our training that we will return to. The robins were given the responsibility to have a place of training for the people. And there were several trainings that these robins offered to the humans. But the one that they were revealing to me was something, the message in my life that my grandmother helped me understand it as an 8-year-old boy. As she put me in these places of training, like the robin. And so we were given the understanding about these places of training the places where we receive something. And I was receiving something amongst the cottonwoods. I was being taught a place of training, and that the song is what I want to sing that comes from the robin. The robin gets to a place along the riverbank, along the river where it was my place to go. And these words to this song are saying to stop and look back at the day. Stop and look back at the day. And that's what I was learning at this place of my training, being amongst the Satadabixw, the standing people. This is what I received there as my part of my training, part of my teaching, is this song. To stop and look back at the day. It can be 1 hour, it can be 1 day, it can be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year, it can be a series, it could be a number of years. But by the time it's one whole training, maybe it's preparing for a ceremony. But from beginning to end, it's saying to stop and look back at the day, even if it was a period of years. It actually is only 1 day, one period of time. And that's what this song is talking about, that I received this amongst the cottonwood trees. Ya, ya, oh ya, oh yeah, oh ya, oh yeah, oh ya, oh yeah, oh ya, oh yeah, oh ya. Ya, ya, Skokomish oh ya, oh yeah, Skokomish oh ya, oh yeah. Oh yeah, oh yeah, 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 oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Thank you.